Deputy Commissioner Andrew Crisp, thank you very much for making yourself available to African Media Australia.
Quite right, Clive.
You've been quite busy lately with these incidents happening within African communities. Tell us a bit what's been happening.
Look, I guess there's no need to talk about specific incidents. People will have seen the media reporting around what's seen as the Airbnb party, the assault on a police member at the High Point shopping centre, and other things that have been portrayed in the media. So we know there's been a series of incidents in recent times that have come to the police attention and also the attention of the media.
Now, there's been a lot of pressure being put both on police and the government to admit there is an African gang problem. What's your response?
Look, it's really interesting when you talk about gangs. You know, what's a gang? You know, a gang can be anything from a group of young guys and girls hanging around on street corners, right through to outlaw motorcycle gangs. So we talk about Clubhouse and Colours. So again, the community is using the language of gangs. The media's picked up on the language of gangs. So again, if it's about young people that are coming together, congregating, engaging in some antisocial behaviour, if it makes it easier for everyone to call it gangs, we'll call them street gangs.
But it looks like the language has changed a little bit. On one of your intervention in the media, you were quite clear they are not gang, but then later on the language changed a little bit, say, okay, maybe they are street gangs. So is that pressure that you're getting from outside?
No, not at all. And in some earlier media I didn't necessarily say that there weren't gangs. I said there was no evidence or intelligence in relation to this MTS. But again, if the language that's being used now by people in the community and by the media, and if by definition a gang is a group of young people hanging around on a street corner, if it makes it easier for people to better understand what we're dealing with, then let's call them street gangs.
But is it about making people understand what we're dealing with, or is it about telling people the exact situation on the ground?
Well, it's a bit of both, because the conversation I've had already is about, we know it's mainly young men coming together. At times, that group is quite fluid. So I'm still explaining the same thing, but if it makes it easier for people to understand or for us to be clearer, then let's call them street gangs.
Can you give us some figures with regards to the level and gravity of antisocial behaviours from African?
Oh, look, I haven't got any specific data when we're talking about antisocial behaviour. We know what what's been termed the Airbnb party. And there were quite a number of young people of African background there. But again, I don't want to stigmatise people. In terms of how many were actually involved in antisocial or criminal behaviour. There are a lot of people that were just there, and that's what we find generally with people that congregate. There might be some committing offences, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is.
Now, I've seen some figures that seem to indicate that an average Australian person is 25 times likely to be attacked or victimised by another white Australian person than an African person. Is that right?
Oh, I haven't seen that data, to tell you the truth. No.
But it remains the case that despite all this attention in the media, the proportion of crime committed by youth from African background is significantly small, isn't it?
Oh, it's small in terms of the overall crime. There is some commentary at the moment about, if we want to talk about young people of African background, or if you want to talk about people of South Sudanese background, it makes up a very small part of the overall population of the state. Are those people overrepresented? Are they committing more crimes than others from other communities? Then there appears to be the evidence to suggest that's the case.
Now, do you think these incidents that have happened over the last 3-4 weeks deserve this much attention?
Look, I guess it's always a balancing act, and again, where incidents occur, it's the media is within its rights to report what's actually occurring out on the street. I must admit that it certainly has generated, I think, a lot more media interest than we might generally see through the rest of the year.
And then we see a lot of politicians, some even from the federal government, and a whole lot of media report It's easy actually to see that there's more than just talking about the incidents that the youth are doing in the community.
Yeah, look, again, I want to speak from Victoria Police perspective. You know,
Yes.
Victoria Police, we have that interesting role in terms of, rest assured, if young people, it doesn't matter what their cultural background is, if they're committing offences, then we will do whatever we can to arrest those people, put them before the courts, and to keep the community safe. Not only so they are safe, but so they feel safe. So that's an important piece of work for Victoria Police, and we don't shy away from that. The other piece is, importantly though, we actually want to better understand, we want to work with community, we want to work with these young people, because ideally we don't want to be locking up young people. I don't think that's a good sign of a civilised community where you're actually locking up young people. So we also work very much in that preventative, proactive space. So we want to work with community leaders, we want to work with other young people from the African Australian community. We want to work with other government departments. So we want to do whatever we can to stop people from committing these crimes in the first place. And getting in the criminal justice system is not a good place to be.
Now, talking about working with African communities and all other stakeholders, but specifically with African communities, do you think Victoria Police's engagement with the community is working? Is it effective enough?
Look, it's a good question, and I think there is really good engagement. You know, we've met together at many different events. I attend a lot of events, as do other police. So I think there is really strong engagement. There's some really good work at the moment. You know, we're actually trying to attract more people of African background into Victoria Police with our big recruiting drive. So there's some really good work happening across the community there, which I think longer term will actually, you know, produce some really good benefits for us. Again, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about Australian African young people or young people from all other communities. I think the important thing is actually to listen to young people, to get a better sense and understand what's causing them their concerns, what are their frustrations. So for me, I think that's the next piece around this. You know, I speak to various community leaders about what they think has occurred over the last few weeks. I haven't had the opportunity maybe to speak to some of those young people that might have been directly involved or have got a different insight. So I think that's the next most important piece for us. And we found this with the Chief Commissioner's Youth Summits, that the important thing is when you organise a conference or a summit, I actually talk to some young people first about helping them structure. So let them inform the way that we then go about our business. So we are doing some of that, but I think that's the next challenging piece for us, to listen to those young people.
Some people say that in terms of Victoria Police engagements with the community, you engage with community leaders, you engage with youth that are potentially not necessarily those who would go into antisocial behaviours, and there's very little or very ineffective engagement with those young people who actually need help or are on the verge of needing help. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yes, that's what I was just touching on then. I think that the challenge is how do we listen more directly from those young people that are either engaging in this sort of behaviour at the moment, or are maybe being persuaded to go down that particular path. So they're the ones that we really need to listen to. But don't get me wrong, I think it's important for Victoria Police to engage at all levels. It's important that we engage with community leaders. It's important that we engage with young leaders, because I think, you know, it's not just the one group of people that will influence and impact on what's occurring at the moment and what we want to actually fix for the future, but we've all got to work together on this. We've all got a role.
And I suppose from a media perspective, when there's a significant issue that is affecting either the community as a whole or a small group, a small section of the community, you would want to see some sort of mass communication campaign going for. I haven't seen much from Victoria Police.
So sorry, this is to the young people that are getting involved in this antisocial behaviour?
That's right.
Yeah, again, I guess that's that piece about how best do we listen or communicate with those young people. Again, you know, we are doing a lot more in terms of our own social media. Again, I think there's opportunities for us to learn to do more about how we actually engage. So again, we don't suggest for 1 minute that we've got all the answers to this. And that's what Victoria Police has been saying. So whether it's us working with community, working with other government departments, in terms of dealing with some of these antisocial issues or the underlying causes, then if there's help that can be provided to us by others, then we're more than willing to listen. But I do want to make the point, when it comes to actual policing, when it comes to doing what we need to do to take action where people are actively involved in whether it's the high-end offending that we've seen or this antisocial type behaviour that's criminal, then we will act and we will arrest, as we saw yesterday with an incident out at Tarneit.
Do you agree with people who say perhaps the Victoria Police is too soft on dealing with youth crime?
Look, when you talk about youth crime, actually the overall youth crime, the number of youth offenders has increased quarter by quarter by quarter. Our police members have never been locking up more people. Last quarter, another 4% increase in relation to the number of people that we've arrested. So we're certainly arresting a lot of people. I guess at times we don't necessarily publicise when in fact we do make arrests in relation to some of these matters. We put it out there, but at times it doesn't get picked up by the media.
Is the court system good enough for your work?
Oh, look, it's not really my place to make comment on the courts and to criticise the courts. Similarly, they don't criticise police. All I will say is that at times, and being honest, sometimes our members are frustrated by what does happen in the court, whether that's people being released on bail or some of the sentencing that comes out of some of the courts sometime. But so there is some frustration, but again, that's not really a matter for me to comment on.
But wouldn't Victoria Police perhaps bring the matter to the relevant politicians, say perhaps that there's a need to do a bit more here because our job is getting tougher with this?
Oh, look, I think there's been quite a bit of public commentary that's sort of featured in the media that I'm sure has got to politicians in relation to, again, not necessarily the frustration of police, but the frustration of the general public in relation to some sentencing issues.
The African communities have met and just released a media statement in relation to what has been happening. Do you have any reaction to that?
Yeah, I had a quick read of that statement before we started this interview, and again, it's a very balanced piece. It acknowledges that there are some issues with some young people in the community, but it also talks about the good work that community leaders are doing. It talks about the good relationship with Victoria Police. So, yeah, it's certainly a statement that we support as an organisation, and we need to continue to work with all sections of the various African communities.
And what would be your message to the young people out there from African background who feel so threatened because the majority of them are doing well, they are law-abiding individuals, but this whole negative publicity is putting them in a very difficult situation where they're going to have more barriers on their way and having a lot of difficulties. Yeah,
look, and I understand that. And, again, only 2 weeks ago I went to a Somali Awards night for young people graduating from high school and from university that would be acknowledged by the Somali community. Fantastic, positive night. I met so many young people. I've been to so many African community events in over the last 10 years, and I continually interact with young people that are so impressive. I guess my message is, and I will never understand because I'm not a person of colour of African background, but I just say just stay the course. I think the vast majority of Victorians actually well and truly support whatever your dreams are for the future. Whether you want to join Victoria Police or you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. But I do understand it's difficult. We've got a number of people of African background working in Victoria Police, and I remember when the whole Apex gang issue was raised some time ago, and talking to a young woman, and she was saying when she travels to work by train, and she feels as though everyone's looking at her, thinking she's a member of Apex, and so I understand that's how a lot of young people in the African Australian community is actually feeling at the moment, and that's why as long as I'm in this job and other police I know are equally dedicated to the cause around this, we will do whatever we can to make sure that, you know, this is a better community for all Victorians, all people, particularly those of African background.
And maybe last question, what would you be a message to the media out there that seems to be overgeneralizing, getting sensationalist reports and the level of damage that may be causing to the community? What would be your message?
Look, and I think I said it last week. I said in terms of these young people who are engaging in this antisocial behaviour, don't play to their ego. Don't feed their ego. Don't make them, you know, into a bigger star than they already might think that they are. I guess a message to the media more generally is always about balance. You know, finding the balance. You know, again, I go to a lot of community events. I very, very rarely see mainstream media at those community events actually reporting on the really, really good stuff that's happening in the community. So for me, with the media more generally, please just find some balance in all of this.
All right, Deputy Commissioner, thank you very much for your time to Africa Media Australia.
Thanks as always, Clyde. Thank you.